And we're live in the recovery room, the emergency part 2 of the Pocketnow Weekly. You will not believe what happened, folks. If you're just watching this video, you want some context, you want to know why all the fancy stuff isn't happening, well, everything broke and things caught on fire. Someone died probably somewhere in some server farm, far away. And it is not at all guaranteed that this will continue to work. We had a board failure, and then Google kicked me out in the middle of a live hangout. It decided to challenge my authentication. Which triggered the two-factor authentication, which means that I was waiting for a text. I was waiting for a text message to show up on my phone. Of course, the phone doesn't have any reception in the studio, so I had to go upstairs. And the phone decided just not to connect to the cellular network until we were back here. And I hit the button. I started this one, and then I got my confirmation text from Google. So sorry about the mess, everyone. Sorry to those of you who we have no viewers right now. We have no live viewers, but later on. They'll stack up on YouTube, and we'll see how it goes. So very sorry. Yes, I will tweet it. Once you guys tell me where you were when I had to go spend 20 minutes on the sidewalk waiting for a text message. What you guys?
We just finished talking about the Motorola Valentine's Day sale.
Very good then. Cam, are you still with us in this roughshod amateur?
I'm still with you.
Bush League bullshit.
We in Britain pride ourselves on doing things adequately or slightly less than adequately. So.
Well, then, that's wonderful. Well, that's exactly what's happening on today's episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. So, my apologies for our technical shortcomings, folks, and let's move right on. And if we're done talking about Motorola, let's move on to whatever the hell the next thing is on the rundown.
Samsung Galaxy. Yes, yeah, apparently it's going to be the new Galaxy phone. Who knew?
So what is the story? We have a render, which always is just the most exciting thing as far as I'm concerned.
They're getting more interesting.
Yeah, no, they are, and I actually do like renders a little better than I like leaked photos. So, Stephen, tell us what's going on as I tweet the link to the new show.
Sure. We've been seeing a rush lately of renders, non-officially sourced, but based off of information that's already been leaked, based on pics, based on schematics. Some very talented 3D designers are putting together these renders that are going to give us probably the best idea we have so far of what these models are going to look like. They may be off, and this is, again, it's based on information that's not official to begin with, but they look pretty polished. We saw some really cool HTC One M9 ones the other day, and then those were followed up shortly thereafter by a new Galaxy S6 render. Now, we've seen a lot of Galaxy S6 renders thanks to case makers. Those are often covered up, though. We've seen some with transparent cases that look pretty good. But this latest render, it's a little bit different, and I mean little bit different than some of those earlier ones. It's based on a more recently provided set of schematics, and it's just showing a little bit of differentiation. The only things I noticed really were some moving around of the prox sensors up top, and the home button look has been constantly changing. No one really seems sure what to make of this home button. This new one's a little bit larger than we saw before, at least taller, larger, and kind of squatter looking. Presumably we have another fingerprint sensor embedded in there. But it looks pretty nice. We still have that kind of prominent camera out back jutting past the otherwise flat exterior, and it does seem to be more pronounced than it was on the Galaxy S5, but I guess we can live with it. It's also this one doesn't show us one of them does show us the underneath view a little bit, and yeah, it's kind of ripping off the iPhone 6, but I can live with that. I ain't a hater. What do you guys think of this new look?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Stephen, this is not at all a surprise. Nothing about this is a surprise to me. It looks a lot like a Samsung phone. It looks like it looks reasonably classy. I don't know if there's nothing here for me to complain about, rejoice in, or otherwise comment on. It just looks like what the Galaxy S6 would look like. It's painfully predictable. I mean, and it's not. People are going to say I'm dogging Samsung, and I'm not. It's just this is what happens when you have a manufacturer going into its 6th iteration of an increasingly homogenized category. Like, it's whatever. It's whatever. If this render is at all accurate. Cam, what's the word?
It's obviously with it being metal, it's going to be a bit more solid than last generation, but from a design standpoint, it looks like a Galaxy device. I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. We'll see when we get our hands on it.
At least the Band-Aid design isn't coming back, so that's something.
Yeah. You know what? I actually really like.
You like that?
Oh wait, so you're the guy.
I'm the guy.
There had to be someone.
I know. I saw the blue, the electric blue with the dots, and I just thought it looked really cool. But
Oh, well, I mean, I'll give you that. The electric blue. Yeah, the electric blue was, and you know when they reduced the scale of the dots for the Galaxy Alpha, when it was much more of a stipple, a very subtle stipple, and not so much the golf ball dimples. Oh my God, that looked tremendously great. So maybe we'll see something similar on this new one.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Of the things we've seen so far, this is based on. I don't think that the texture is very set in stone. This seems more based on measurements and layout things than actual material. So this very well could be one of the loosest parts of this particular render. But it still looks.
I think the one thing that maybe concerns me ever so slightly, you know, if you look on the back of the render, where the metal chassis or the frame looks quite rounded at the corners, it worries me that it's not going to be flush with the back of the phone. I'm not sure. You know, when you might just catch a hair in it or something. If you have facial hair.
What was that phone?
Yeah, it was
a Galaxy.
Sony. I think it was. I thought it was a Sony Z3.
Everyone's like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get so much dust stuck in there." And they're like, "Cool down. It's like those grates in a bridge. It expands and contracts based on thermal variation."
Oh no, that was the Note 4 then. Yeah.
Okay.
Between the Gorilla Glass 4
it was a Samsung
and the metal bit. Yeah. At the same time, people were complaining about that, and they were complaining about bendgate on the iPhone 6 Plus. Then people found a Sony phone. Like somebody found a Sony phone and did like either an extensive text piece or a way too long video on how like it traps your hair and like pulls out your hair when you're talking on the phone with it, and it was like there was plenty of news for us to talk about in the fall, but everyone was acting like there was no news, and we had to go find some stuff to complain about on every phone ever. Oh my God, it was terrible. While I'm going to, this room seems to be working nicely, and I'm going to re-embed this video in the podcast post. So while I do that, I want to hear about iOS.
But before we move on to that, I just wanted to comment. One of the stories that came down the pipeline this morning as we were putting this podcast together, Samsung started teasing the next Galaxy. They're not calling it the Galaxy S6 by name yet on social media, and it changed its like Twitter user icon to this Squircle circle inside icon, and it also shows up in the video itself, but it very much looks like the camera we see on this guy. The circle, I think it's a little bigger in Samsung's thing, but it's close. I'm pretty sure that it's going to focus a lot on camera performance being a major selling point of the GS6.
And hadn't we heard that the GS6 was going to come with a 20 megapixel sensor? What was the veracity?
That came out the other day. That was a Sam Mobile supposedly insider source talking about the camera on there, but I wouldn't be surprised to go 20 megapixels.
Yeah, no, it follows. I mean, 20 megapixel sensors are nothing new. We've seen them on the Lumias, we've seen them on the Sonys and a couple others, and Samsung does like to have substantial spec bumps to point to when they come out with a new flagship piece of hardware, and the added resolution doesn't really hurt anything. It certainly, we talk about it as not being the defining characteristic of a smartphone camera, but it's certainly great to have if you're trying to do some digital zoom, Mm-hmm. Do we think it's going to affect the low light capabilities, though? I mean, if they're pointing to the camera's abilities, then OIS is probably going to be bundled in. So I'm not worried about it.
Because it's big, you have to think that there's some substantial hardware in there to make this thing jutting out to the extent that it is.
That was my first thought. With the amount that it actually sticks out, it's got to be at least half decent in low light. Otherwise, they just make it again flush with the back of the phone, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Or maybe they're just copying Apple, because Apple has a protruding camera now. So
barely protrudes. Come on. That was another one of those things when we had to find things to complain about, like there wasn't any real news last fall.
Yeah, really. So speaking of Apple, what's the story on the larger apps that are landing in the store, or that are now that are not landing yet, but are now authorized for the store? And
no, they've been there. Apparently, Apple's been like on the sly letting these in since a little earlier in the year, but now it's formal. Apple has raised its limit on App Store app size from 2 gigabytes to 4 gigabytes. That doesn't change anything about, you still have that 100 megabyte over-the-air limit, which some users are frustrated about and would like to have that choice theirs to make rather than Apple's. Whatever, you can always find a Wi-Fi spot later, even if you have to wait till you're at home. But now it's a possibility to get bigger than ever apps, which it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, while it allows developers to put a lot more content in there and to make, Microsoft, we were talking about universal apps, this is probably going to mean some higher quality, larger, high-profile titles, especially for gaming, when you get in the whole PC, Xbox, moving those same titles over to the phone. If that's going to be a bigger competitor in the future, Apple wants to have more high-quality titles of its own. So 4 gigabytes gives developers more room for resources, characters, textures. It's just going to be a richer experience all around. Of course, this means if you have a smaller phone, though, you're going to be hitting the walls of your storage limits very, very quickly. So maybe 16 gigabytes won't be the lowest option for the next iPhone. Maybe the 32 gigabyte model will come back as the minimum, but you want to go 128 gigabytes if you want to be safe, even though Apple will charge you, your firstborn son for the privilege of having a phone with such capacity. But
this reminds me of a pitch email I got this week to cover a PC game that's a first-person sci-fi game whose name I don't remember, but we opted not to cover it because we don't cover PC gaming. But I was like, man, well, we don't yet, really. No. You know what I mean?
We're thinking about it.
We're thinking about it. So then I was like, oh my God, if you guys did a mobile port of this, I would love to cover this. And they said that that's in their plans. So okay, cool. But it just puts me in mind of that because that looked like a very graphically demanding title, and I was like, we're seeing more and more advanced games in mobile. So this makes all the sense in the world, the 4 gig limit. Just to, like you said, Stephen, give developers the resources and the space needed to make higher quality titles. Now, what are the app limits? What are the capacity limits on other platforms? Do we know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And I wonder how this affects. I'm not often used to, but I've seen apps where you download the main app, and then the first time you run it, it's got to go and download a crap load of resources from its server that it puts in the phone. So yeah, it's a 20 megabyte download, but it balloons to 300 megabytes after it downloads all the the tracks, the levels, the whatever have you. I wonder how that.
It looks like Android expanded their app size limit to 4 gigs back in 2012, according to a post on androiddevelopers.blogspot.com. And then there are people who have found apps that are beyond a 50 meg limitation for the initial download, and then the expansion APKs afterwards. So, it's had 4 for a while. I wonder what Windows Phone is. Not that it necessarily matters much given
7 megs.
The state of the games categories in the Windows Store. But I don't know, we can look at it.
It might also have something to in December. Didn't Apple tell all app developers that they had to have 64-bit support on all their apps? So that might make a small difference.
Speaking of other platforms, I was trying to wake up the 830 here to be my podcast assistant, and it's not waking up right now. So every piece of technology we touch today, this is the technical preview, so we expect that, but every piece of tech we touch today is just breaking all around us.
I'm looking at all of my Humble Bundle Android games here, trying to see what the largest one is. It looks like 2 gigabytes is the largest one that developers have been.
Did you ever play Republic? On iPad? That was a huge download.
No, what was Republic about? Should I download this French title?
You should. It's by a developer called Camouflage, and they I think some of the guys, they used to work on things like Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation years ago. And it's like an exploration game, but graphically it's quite intense. There's a lot of space to move around in the map. There's lots and lots of data, and you paid quite a lot for the initial download, and that got you the first chapter, and then you could pay again to get the next few episodes. So you end up paying maybe $15 all in, but you get this huge game that takes up all the space on your iPad. If I ever want to download anything, videos or content, I always have to delete that one first before I can go and do anything else.
It's 1.1 gigs just for the base download here.
Yeah.
And then there's downloadable content after the initial download.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
It's a big app.
I got to add that to the list after I finally played The Room 2, which I think I've had on my device for 8 months and haven't gotten around to playing yet. But
I got through that in about 2 hours, I think.
Oh,
really? Ooh, yeah. Damn, all right. Well, the gauntlet has been thrown. What are we doing tonight? Let's pivot to wearables, please. Android Wear there's some metrics on the market today, metrics on the wire today about the market, and these have been released by Canalys, and we got it from
It's a shame that we're not
GigaOM.
seeing more, though. So Canalys talked a little bit about it. It left out a lot of details. It said that we saw in the past year, in 2014, there were about 4.6 million smart wearables, and it uses that to mean any sort of wrist-borne, you can wear it in your ankles, anything that's not a clip-on design, and that can run its own software or run third-party software. It draws a line between wearables like fitness trackers and smartwatches, because sometimes it's a little blurry where the distinction is there. The ability to, and I know it doesn't necessarily mean apps that you run directly on the watch, like a full-on like a watch that runs straight up Android, not Android Wear. It's, I think, counting things like Pebble, which are loaded by the app on the phone onto the watch, but 4.6 million of these total, which is a decent number, but of them, Android Wear, it sees only making up about 720,000 of them, which is less than 15, or just over 15%. We don't really have a lot of context, because this is a very new market, but I, for one, found that figure a little surprising. I mean, granted, Android Wear, a lot of the really compelling models, like the Moto 360, didn't come out until close to the end of the year, with just a few months before December there. But still, 720,000 doesn't sound like a lot.
No, it doesn't, and especially when you consider that it's not sold, but it's shipped.
Yeah.
So this does not take into account models that are sitting there on the shelf. I think it was GigaOM who suggested that there's a lot of Gear Lives possibly sitting on the shelf at Best Buy waiting to move for months and months. So
Gear 2 Neo.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how many of those are things that Samsung is over-prepared for and just shipped millions of Samsung Gear devices?
Right, but the Gear devices are in a totally different category though too, because that was the surprising part to me, where I was like, what percentage did we say it was? The 720,000?
That was
a total
over 15.
A little over 15. So 85% of the rest of them are Pebbles.
That's Tizen.
Tizen?
Yeah.
Are really that many people buying Tizen smartwatches?
A few of them could be like these giant Kickstarters, the ones that actually run full-blown Android on them, but I can't imagine it's a very large fraction, and unfortunately we don't have the detailed breakdown to look at.
I don't see a lot of people running around wearing like Neptune pines, Martians,
That would be awesome.
Sweet, everybody had a tablet on it. But that just was stunning to me, because I think of the options, despite Android Wear's numerous shortcomings, I do think it is the leading platform right now in terms of utility, in terms of striking the right balance between utility and user friendliness. If you have an Android phone, of course. Cam, what are you wearing? Is that a fitness wearable you've got on, or what?
This is the Up 24, the Jawbone. It's not a smartwatch. I have a Moto 360 over there somewhere, and 2 Pebble Steels over there as well. That I
one
don't
for each
wear.
wrist.
Yeah, one for each.
No.
I got one that was faulty. The screen was wrong, and they sent me a replacement, and they never collected the old one. So I have 2 Pebble Steels, one leather, one metal.
So why are they not making a home on your wrist, Cam? Is it just you're just not sold on the category? You don't like those particular implementations? You're sick of them? Yeah, sick of charging them? What's the deal?
I love the Moto 360, but I think it's more to do with the fact that I change phones so often that I don't want to have to keep repairing and reconnecting. So
isn't that frustrating?
Yeah. So I mean, the Moto 360 would normally be on my wrist, but it hasn't been for a few days.
Yeah.
It's flat, and I haven't bothered to charge it. That's all. That's all it is, really.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I've actually woven that in rather well to my to my daily routine. Like I come home, I go to bed, I drop a phone on the Qi charging plate, and I drop the Moto 360 on its own little Qi pedestal, and it works out pretty well. It would work out even better if my Moto X had Qi wireless charging, because I'll put that on the Qi charging plate, and it looks nice, but it doesn't really do anything. But it's I don't mind it. The only time I mind, I think I mentioned last week, is when I go over to stay over at my girlfriend's house, or I have a sleepover with my buddies, and I have to bring a Motorola a Qi charger for my smartwatch, which is really fun. Anyway, this is directly related to rumors out of HTC talking about a new wearable with a really, really funny screen dimension, which says to me I'm probably not going to care too much about it on account of maybe it's a fitness band. Steven,
Yeah,
unlock the mysteries for me.
really fitness heavy. So HTC, rumors have been flying for literally years that it's working on a wearable of some kind. The company acknowledged this, that it would do a wearable when it made sense, when it could do a really good one. Last year we saw there was a promotional video HTC released that made it look like someone in the cubicle had a very smartwatch-looking thing they were working on. The company's like, no, nothing like that just yet. So now we're wondering if yet is finally coming around. And there have been numerous suggestions that MWC will finally be when HTC gets ready to reveal its first smartwatch. As that's coming up, we're hearing a few more details. And this hardware is starting to sound less like a smartwatch and more like a fitness tracker a la Microsoft's efforts. So yeah, there's that weird display, a very rectangular 32 by 160 pixels, which sort of screams to me fitness band, not a square smartwatch face. And there's talk of accessories like a pad that would slide into your shoe, kind of like that old the Nike thing for the iPod. What was that called?
What? They had a shoe accessory for that thing?
Yeah, for the.
It was like a Nike Plus Fit thing. Well,
yeah,
I don't remember what it was called.
And it clipped onto your shoe to use as a pedometer there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But something like that but it would be like an insert that would, I don't know if this, we heard about something a while back that would like analyze your how you were walking and try to give you advice on carrying yourself better. I don't think that's what this is. At least there's no hint yet that it's so advanced. But it's very fitness focused. So also probably not an Android Wear device. They talk about this using a real-time operating system that may be based on Android, but not running Android apps, not just probably using the kernel, if even that, and not connecting with Android Wear compatible software on your phone. This would be HTC's own little thing. And one reason for that might be to give it broader device compatibility. We hear especially iOS connection might be something HTC is going for here. And I guess that is might be a way to get the sales up to a workable level. If we're seeing this, these Android Wear numbers being as low as they are, the fact that you're tied to using them with an Android device may be part of that. Granted, Apple users are going to be heavily drawn to the Apple Watch when it finally starts selling in a couple of weeks, but if there's that's going to be relatively expensive, even for the most affordable option there. It is an Apple product after all. But if HTC can do a really cheap thing that's decent, why not? It's something to consider, especially if it's more lightweight than the Apple Watch. This may give iOS users a reason to consider a product from another manufacturer.
Yeah, I guess the question will be: is there space in between, like things like the Jawbone or the Fitbit and the Apple Watch for iPhone owners who want to buy a wearable? And it'll depend on what this wearable from HTC actually offers, if it offers anything, if it is real. That screen measurement thing. I mean, I think it's possible to make a good-looking device in this form factor. I think the Gear Fit looked really good, and it felt really good, and it worked really well.
I think there's a weird middle ground here between very not bare bones, but very hardware simplistic fitness trackers, ones that don't have screens, but they do have incredible battery life, and they often have great connectivity options with devices. On the far end, you have the smartwatches that are the battery hogs with the big displays that can run a lot of powerful software themselves, maybe have some limitations with other devices they can work with. Then there's this middle ground with their Fitness Tracker Plus. They'll have a screen, they might have some extra features on there, but price goes up a lot. You start to lose some of those battery savings, and I don't know if it's a worst of both worlds or best of both worlds situation.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I mean, the fitness tracking market is quite full now, but like you say, the area where it's not full is things like the Fitbit Surge, which is a fitness tracker that looks a bit more like a watch. So if that's the kind of thing that HTC are going for, that's got a display, that's got all the fitness tracking stuff as well, then they haven't really got that much competition, except, I guess, Samsung. But then Samsung's products won't work with an iPhone, so... It might be clever, it might not be clever. You don't know.
We don't know enough.
Could be
amazing.
amazing.
Is going to make a huge difference here. Battery life is going to be something everyone's concerned about. I think until we have those answers, and I wonder, did that come out in this leak? They talk about did
think you guys are overlooking the really compelling thing about this, which is that this RTOS is just a rewritten build of Windows RT. So, it's going to be really great. Yeah.
Wait. Where are you getting that from?
It's only for Windows Phone.
That's right. This is the Although I would buy that. I would buy an HTC-made Windows Phone wearable in a hot second. But
those live tiles would work really well on the square screen.
They sure. Oh, absolutely. Just do a little swipe. Can I confess something to you guys? I'm looking forward to talking about that HTC thing more. I'm just so pissed off still, and I need about our technical problems, and I need something that's going to put me into a better mood. And we don't have a sound drop for it. I don't know if we have an animation for it. I don't know if we have anything to usher us into this little corner of our friggin' podcast. But it's a segment we've done once before. It's called Nerd Nostalgia. I love it. And this is what we're going to do right now. Let's talk about the past, mofos. Are you ready? Because this is the only thing that's going to make me happy right now is thinking back to over a decade ago to when things were different and simpler. And I could make livejournal.com updates from my BlackBerry.
Yeah. when Nokia ruled the world.
Yeah, oh yeah, indeed. Nokia and Palm together. Yeah. So this is a segment, folks. Last time we had this thing, we talked about AMPS, the Advanced Mobile Phone System, or analog telecommunications. That was a lot of fun. This time, we're talking about an era when phones were made to be small. They weren't made to be highly functional. So the most advanced things you could hope to find in a cell phone store were, they were like the size of like little, like maybe the droppings of a large raccoon. Like I think that was the target cross section for a mobile phone in the days of the dumb phone, because you wanted it to be as pocketable as possible. But also you had people saying, well, I'd like to use my calendar. I'd like to get my Rolodex on here. I'd like to do my task list and such things. And for that, you had dedicated devices called personal digital assistants.
Yes.
Since he's been our guest, and since I think he has the coolest thing on the air right now, Cam Bunton, what was your first PDA, and how did it change your life?
My first PDA. I didn't actually 10 years ago. I don't think I actually owned one, but I remember the first one I actually bought was, I think it was an HTC-made device, but it was a carrier-branded one. It was an MDA Vario, which was Windows Mobile.
One of the first smartphones, yes?
Yeah.
One of the first. Yeah. No,
Windows Mobile, which was basically a pocketable version of, I guess, Windows XP, with all the fiddly menus and a stylus. But recently, I bought this, which is the Ericsson R380. And I bought this just because I remember seeing them at the time and thinking that's really cool, and somebody was selling it on eBay. And that is a PDA in there with a touchscreen, and then you flip it over, and it's a regular mobile phone.
Usable anymore? Was that analog cell? Or?
This is analog, yes.
Wow.
Only analog, not digital at all?
I don't think it's digital. I'm not sure. I think it's analog.
And so it's got a flip-down keyboard like the later P900s would have, with the numeric on the outside, just the numeric on the inside. What's on each side?
It's the numeric on the outside, but if you look on the back of the flip, you'll see it's got like little buttons. It sort of presses down on the screen. So
wow. And the black and white LCD, yeah. Did it have a backlight?
I can't tell.
I wish.
I remember that one of these Kia Ceras had a big old black and white LCD, but it had a sweet green backlight.
Oh yeah, they have like the little yellow or green lights around the sides that aren't really diffused properly.
Yeah, right. Instead of the bright points. Oh man.
No, I think this might be digital. I think it may have had really early GPR. I'm not sure. It was back in the day when mobile internet was WAP and it was black and white on your screen, and you couldn't really do much with it, and it would take hours to load, and nobody really had a web page.
Right, and every time you made a request, every time you clicked a link, you'd see the sending and receiving arrows go on forever before the page would load. Yes.
But but you could it had a browser. You could send emails, calendar, tasks. It was a phone and a little PDA in your pocket.
Now this was
made by Ericsson.
Was this before integrated Wi-Fi chipsets? Because was the mobile network your only option for that?
Yes, your mobile network was the only option. So you had GPRS. or the mobile network. I think, you know, when you wanted to connect to the browser, I can't really test it now because I never got the settings working. But it actually shows you like a little dialing screen. It says dialing.
Wow.
It's like you have to put a phone number in the internet settings for it to connect to in order for you to get in. It's basically mobile dial-up.
Yeah, I ran into
on your
that.
phone.
I ran into that when I was doing the throwback on the CLEA that's on the screen right now, where it was like, yeah, it has the software for a modem connection, but it doesn't actually have a modem in it. So you have to get a modem that has an IR port, or you have to drop the thing into the cradle, and then it can dial up. Yeah, because you could do data through the IR port on the CLEA.
Oh, but that one doesn't have its own cellular radio.
That's correct. No cellular radio, no Wi-Fi radio, no Bluetooth. I mean, that was...
Wait, no Wi-Fi either?
This has infrared too.
What were you supposed to use it for?
This was in a period when this is what Stephen.
This was amazing back in the day. This was like the best thing in the world.
So like you could carry it with you throughout the day, and somebody would be like, "Hey, meet me for coffee on Saturday." And you'd be like, "Okay, I'm putting that in my calendar." It's exactly a Palm Pilot.
I did not know what Palm OS.
Yeah, so you could put it in and you'd be like, okay, I got my calendar, and then you have like, okay, shopping list down here now, and I've got some MP3s that I want to listen to, and when I get home, I drop it in the cradle that's plugged into my machine, and then it syncs everything. It does the hot sync, which was a hot term, yeah. But
one of my friends had a Palm Tungsten. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah, the Tungsten one was like very premium, wasn't it? Wasn't it like a gunmetal finish and very nice looking, very expensive?
It was. But I think they may have had Bluetooth, and so you could have. I don't know. He somehow managed to send and receive emails on the move, and I don't know how he did it.
Absolutely.
But he had the foldable keyboard as well with the little. Just sort of fold it up and put it in your pocket.
We used to sell those at Nextel for Blackberries. You'd fold up the key. It was a full-size QWERTY, but it had like 3 joints in it, so it would accordion into a 4-segment thing that went into then like a metal wallet that you would carry around.
And it was so cool.
Yes, it was. You deploy it at in the coffee shop, the laundromat, wherever the hell you are, and it's like, Schenck, all right, and then you plug in your tiny BlackBerry to a full-size keyboard, and like, now I'm ready to work.
Yeah.
Speaking of expanding things like that, I was been watching this this VH1 series where this girl time travels back to the 90s, which is just like, for people obsessed with retro tech, this is just a dream come true. The old ThinkPad that had the keyboard that you opened the screen and it kind of spread out. Do you guys remember this?
Wait, it was an IBM.
It was an IBM ThinkPad. It kind of the keyboard was compacted in. It kind of went up and down and left and right. And as you open the screen, it went chunk and it became a full-size keyboard, wider than the body of the laptop.
It
was
fantastic.
Awesome.
No, I've never seen it. Although I did see when I uploaded this Sony CLEA video, someone else was talking to me on Twitter. He had a different version of the Sony CLEA that was it was like a tiny notebook. Like it was about this big. It was about the size of maybe an old Sidekick or something like that, and it would open in landscape mode, and you'd have like a full landscape keyboard and a little hinge and a little monitor, and it was like it looked like exactly like what a futuristic object in a 1980s cartoon would have looked like. For it's like, oh, it's my pocket computer, and it looked so cool.
Jules has the video of the sliding keyboard.
I've never seen that.
I remember why I was thinking of this. I had a little dock for my Dell Axim X30 that was just like this, where it would open up and fold out and become. I mean, it's super cramped still, but a little more usable.
My God, there was so much cool stuff at the beginning of the previous decade that as people are fiddled with form factors and all that kind of stuff, but
the iPhone killed everything cool about technology because now everything just looks the same and does the same thing.
Everything needs to be a minimal slate, right? Yeah, and it's so there's nothing more boring. You remember? I was watching a film, I think one of the Marvel films once, and it was the first Iron Man, and Tony Stark is in the desert at the top, and he has a Verizon branded phone, but I think Nokia made it. And it was a clamshell, but when you opened it up, it was LG. When you opened it up, the display could rotate to a landscape orientation.
Like a T-shape?
Wasn't it Samsung? Samsung did one of those as well.
Possibly. I think this one was LG. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Silver and black.
This is when we wanted our phones to have as many possible parts that could break or just get dust stuck in them. As and there was always moving things as we can.
A rotating camera as well.
Forum with like my new fun thing, and there was always someone like you, Stephen. It was like the second or third reply where it's like, the more parts you put in something, the easier it is to break. And I'm like, what phone do you carry? It's like a Nokia candy bar. I'm like, yeah, I'm very cool, and you're not. Yeah.
I've got a Motorola V70 that swivels 360 degrees.
Oh,
I couldn't look at the
I remember
Kyocera
that.
Echo without being worried I was going to break that thing just by looking at it.
Oh, well, that's a different. Yeah, that's going too far. But
Yeah,
then again, going too far is a good time sometimes when you talk about design.
My worst memories from this era were connectivity related, going back to what we were talking about. With the Axim, it didn't have any GPS built in. It had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so I had to connect to a handheld GPS receiver that I had to charge separately that would connect over Bluetooth. And there wasn't a standardized, or there was a standardized but shitty physical interface. It had, instead of having, like the connectors we have now are usually spring-loaded things or just bare contacts and the springs are in the connector, so there's very little to damage. This thing had physical pins just sort of floating in a little void there. So if you tried to plug in a connector at anything other than a perfectly straight angle, you were going to smush those pins down. And once you did, say goodbye to charging this thing, let alone connecting to your computer ever again.
That's was miserable.
It was irritating.
That just means it's idiot-proof.
Speaking of, I'm sorry. I need to tell that story in a hot second because I just looked at my phone at the wrong time and I'm just LOLing like hard. But before I do that, Stephen, connectivity, yes. During this same period of time, and Cam, it was during the same time as the Palm Tungstens were very popular. People were looking for these connectivity solutions, and if you weren't a businessman, you couldn't afford a portable modem to carry around. You were like, well, I already carry my phone, so what if my phone could provide like a hotspot for my PDA? And there was only one phone in the U.S. that did this. Long-time listeners, you've heard this before. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I remember Sprint was the only carrier for a while that carried interesting phones in the States for tech heads like us. And the T608 from Sony Ericsson.
Yes.
They announced the intention to carry it. They then delayed it for months and months and months. And this was right around the time when Ericsson came out and said, hey, we're not making CDMA phones anymore. So Sprint had already, I think, taken delivery on the 608 inventory, so they were just making the decision whether to sell it or not. They eventually decided to sell, and very, very few people got it, I think, through telesales. The reason this is important is because at the time, the T608 was the only phone to open its Bluetooth connection to an internet.
This wasn't even Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yeah.
This was
No, it was a Bluetooth hotspot, right. So you could keep your phone in your pocket and tether it via Bluetooth to your PDA in your hand and have like a full web browser on your whatever. And man, I never got to do it because it was such an ugly phone and I didn't have a PDA that I was just like whatever. But if I had bought that CLEA like I wanted, I would have used a 608 in my pocket on Sprint's super fast 1XRTT network.
I'm surprised we didn't see more people carrying around acoustic couplers and like plugging their PDA into payphones. Somebody
in the comment on my video, on the CLEA video, said that he used to have that phone, and he did. He had an acoustic coupling modem that he carried around, so he'd be like, he'd roll up to a payphone and be like, watch this, and connect his PDA.
Like last scene in Hackers when they're all in Grand Central.
Yeah, or in War Games, like, you know, with the acoustic coupler attached to the IMSI. Steven, did you have you seem like the kind of guy that would have had a PDA. Did you didn't own one back in the day?
Yeah, I had a Dell Axim.
Okay, so what did the Axim run? Was that a Windows Mobile?
Yeah, Windows Mobile. It had a decent, it was like 600 megahertz processor on there. Intel something.
So this was maybe later on. Was this like 05, 06 time? Because I feel like that.
Yeah, I think it ran Windows Mobile 03. So
okay, so maybe 04.
When did that come out? It's pulled up.
And some hardware keys below the screen. It looks like maybe is that a front-facing camera on that sucker? No, it's something.
I like it had this little plastic riser with the antennas for the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and this is back in the era when you still had dumb phones with those crazy notification LEDs, like your antenna would spin through a rainbow of colors, and sure enough, it was like flash green when you had Bluetooth on, flash blue for Wi-Fi, so you knew at a glance what was enabled there. And of course, it was important because if you didn't turn those radios off when you weren't using them, your battery would just deplete itself in minutes. So
you know who else was big on those was HTC when they started making the smartphones based on Windows Mobile. On the Mogul, there were two separate LEDs. One was for network condition, and the other was for which radios were on and notifications and stuff. Those were the days.
But wait, flashing LEDs, they keep you up at night.
Yeah, But that's in the
like,
best
what?
way.
Is there police outside? Why is there a blue light flashing in my bedroom?
Oh, it's the best. And then Samsung had the rainbow LEDs for a while. That like you wouldn't even not that you could customize them like you could currently, but it was just a rainbow. And if you didn't want a rainbow, then you would turn off your LED. I loved that on my A600. But didn't the Axum have Wi-Fi or something, Stephen?
Yeah, it had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, just no cellular radio.
So what was your usage scenario like? Like, where did you use it? Only at home? Did you use it as a sort of surrogate, like a tablet, or what?
I've told this story before. Because it had SD card support, so I found an offline version of still Wikipedia in its very early days, and I loaded the entire text of the thing onto a 2 gig SD card and used to cheat at bar trivia. That was my connectivity.
You cheated at bar trivia? You never told us that story before. I didn't know you were a bar trivia cheater. I would not associate with you any longer had I known that.
I used it to verify my hunches. Let's call it that.
This is the last weekly you'll ever see Stephen Schenck.
You make it sound so cool.
No, that's wild. I thought you were going to say that you got an SD card, one of those SD cards that had a radio in it, because like the SDIO cards for Wi-Fi. Back in the day, if you had a phone and you wanted to add Wi-Fi capability to it, if it had an SD card slot with SDIO, you could plug in the card and it'd give you Wi-Fi access if you had all the software.
No, I just used it for the Wikipedia thing, and I played around a lot with GPS, like I mentioned earlier, with the Bluetooth Connect GPS for navigation stuff, because I didn't really have we didn't get to the point where there were these very full-featured standalone GPS units that were affordable. So this was super duper hacky, and you had to keep charging the GPS separately, but it worked in a pinch, and it was fun to play with.
While we're talking about connectivity, guys, this is hilarious. Someone in the Q&A was talking about our technical difficulties before. It was Jolly Jacobs again, saying it's a real Friday the 13th for you guys, right? Haha.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but you know what's funny? You remember when I told you guys I went upstairs to go try and get my confirmation text for the two-factor authentication to get back into Google?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That time corresponded exactly with a New England T-Mobile outage. So it wasn't just me. Like, the whole network went down in and around Boston at that very moment. I've just found out. Not at all coincidentally, this was this tip was provided to me by a friend at AT&T who's read my I went to T-Mobile post.
That would be awesome if the carriers had someone like keeping an eye on all their networks, and they're going to tweet, "Oh no, Sprint's down. You really should be on AT&T, guys.
Yeah.
Full-time job."
So
it's the easy out, isn't it? Saying T-Mobile's down.
Absolutely. All right.
They're always down.
It's not really news.
Yeah.
Before we move out of here, because we do have to move out of here, and I have to let Cam go to dinner, and
it's all good. It's all good.
Okay, all right, good. Well, we're about to hear from Stephen about Windows Phone. Before we go, though, do you guys have any specific memories about the PDA period? Because I'm like you, Cam. I don't think I ever had a standalone PDA. The first one that I had with PDA functions was actually a smartphone. It was a BlackBerry 7520. But I remember something very specific about a first with that. Was when I learned how to use the BlackBerry browser, which was a full HTML browser. Incidentally, 3 years before Apple came on the scene saying they brought the real internet with them. I don't often get crabby at Apple, but that's one of the claims I didn't like. And I found out that I could do journal updates, because I really did have like a live journal.
I'm totally gonna find this. This is an interesting audio failure. We have not had the Michael is Milli Vanilli who gets caught with his looping background track before. He's actually been lip syncing all of these podcasts to date. This is the big revelation here.
Yeah.
I cannot believe it. All right, well, I'm back.
Oh wow.
That's the cool.
That sounds like a plane
voice.
going past.
Yeah, I think it's what we had last week.
How's this?
Oh yeah.
Talking about HTML before the iPhone, I remember having a Nokia N70, and that had HTML on it, and that was before. I'm sure that was announced before the iPhone.
What? Oh yeah. No, the real web thing. That's a whole big conversation.
Yeah.
But I just remember being able to pound out an entire maybe 500-word emo bullshit journal entry on this like thumbboard, and being like, wow. I remember where I was. I remember the kind of day it was. It was at the laundromat, And I'm like, can I really do this? Can I do this on a BlackBerry? I can like basically run my life on a mobile browser. That's really, really bizarre. Do you guys have any similar memories of like the first time you were able to do like a rather complex task on a mobile device, and when you first realized the power of a mobile device, maybe?
I think I did, and looking back at it now, it was probably the most terrible thing in the world. But it was the old PDAs when they had their handwriting recognition, and you had to scribble on a little pad. But before you did that,
or whatever.
Do you mean like real handwriting, or like the palm with its graffiti?
This is the palm thing, the graffiti. Where you had to follow the instructions exactly,
Yes.
otherwise it would not understand what you were trying to write.
Yes. Oh,
it's so cool.
A whole new character set.
Yeah. So I could write it in freehand, and it knows what I'm trying to put in.
Man, speaking of palm, I was just playing a 90s Trivial Pursuit, and a question came up about PDAs. I had no idea US Robotics was the company behind Palm initially, whom I only really knew from their modems, but apparently they were, I don't know if they bought Palm or if Palm was a spin-off of them, but modems, PDAs, why not?
wow, that's wild. Yeah, I forgot about that association. There's a lot more nerdy nostalgia. Jules has cooked up a US Robotics page so we can verify that. Yeah, previous products and services, Palm Pilots.
Yeah.
Wow. These were good days. I wish we had a couple fewer technical distractions that could allow us to go for a deep dive on this, but we're over time, and we can't really afford to be over time. And, Palm coming soon. Wait a second. Where is this a landing page? Oh, this is...
Mike just got really excited.
Yeah, this is the TCL page.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, here's the name, what should we do with it? How about make a pre-4? Please make a pre-4 with WebOS.
No, that would be nice, right? But they wouldn't do. They already have a Pixie, so they would make we'll see what they do. I don't want to see a pre-4 if it has Android and some BS skin on it. Do that if you have to, but don't call it the pre-4 or the pre-anything or the
post.
Oh God. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure we'll hear more about that going forward. Let's move on. Well, let's sound the drop so we can get into dial F for fail.
That's right. You were on the.
Oh, that's right. I'm not on the board. So anyway, Stephen, you will have a proper intro in the high-quality cut, assuming we bother to make it. I might just quit after today. I think I'm going to do drive time radio here at WERS. Does that sound good?
Who's on the 5?
Get me in. Get me in the door, please. That'll be fun.
Yes. Only if you donate your car.
I will donate my car. Don't worry. I'll also go steal one first. This is a segment, folks, all about stupidity, general foolishness, and unreasonable moves in the mobile space. Now, Stephen is going to give us both sides of this story, as he always does. Do not be concerned if you thought that this was going to be a hit piece, because there are a couple dynamics to this. But this segment is called, this title is called "Why You'd Be Forgiven for Thinking Microsoft Hates Flagships," or "Why Did My Friend's Crap Phone Get the Windows 10 Phone Preview and Not My 930?" Stephen, we only have about 7 minutes due to my battery life, but take it away, friend.
You know, I wasn't aware I had to hit both sides of the issues here. I was really planning to be one-sided and just unfair, but I guess.
Yeah, well, that factors into the way you normally do things. You bias hack. Right.
So this is what I was talking about earlier when we first brought up the Windows 10 technical preview for phones, in that you can't use it for all devices at the moment. Microsoft was clear about this over the past few weeks. There would be a list of specific devices that were supported, and the good news there was that it would include some of the lower RAM models, which people initially were fearing wouldn't make the cut. Microsoft also explained that we'd be seeing further models added to this list as future technical previews were released, so if your phone wasn't supported out of the gate, it wasn't the end of the world. When we actually got the list of supported models yesterday though, it was a bit of a shock, because these are solidly low to mid-range devices. Probably the 830 is the most interesting spec-wise of the list. Microsoft tried to pass it off as the affordable flagship, but as you might have seen in our review, affordable it may be, flagship it very much is not. So if you have something like a 930, a Lumia Icon, the 1520 we mentioned that Joe Belfiore has been showing off some of these features on, for the moment you're out of luck. Now, Microsoft has a very good explanation for why these higher-end models aren't supported. It has to do with the way the file system is partitioned on these devices, such that installing the update, the way it's being done now, would prove problematic with the amount of size allocated for the operating system partition. Microsoft has a plan for addressing this, and in future updates, we definitely will see the ability to install it on these higher-end phones, but that doesn't change the fact that it's kind of a black mark on Microsoft that it wasn't able to do this out of the gate. I say this because Microsoft's had a problem for a while now when it comes to flagship devices on Windows Phone. We haven't seen a new one that I would consider a capital F flagship, and again, I'm not considering the 831 in a very long time now, coming up on a year in just a few months. And there's been rumors suggesting we won't see another model like this until the latter part of 2015. So if you were already being nervous about Windows Phone being a platform that wasn't very conducive towards users looking for bleeding-edge tech, this is doing nothing at all to dismiss that fear. Should Microsoft have held out a little more until this, it calls it partition stitching, the technique it's going to use to deliver Windows 10 to these devices like the 930 and 1520, should it have waited a little longer to release the technical preview until that was ready to go? I maybe want to say yes. Now, we don't have a lot of insight into exactly where along in development that is. Michael mentioned that he was a little surprised to see the technical preview come out when it did yesterday. Microsoft had until the end of February, and we would have gotten a little anxious, but we wouldn't have taken pitchforks and torches to Redmond and demanded the preview come out then. We knew it was coming. Maybe it could have waited a little longer and got this thing ready to go for more devices. I would have liked to see it support higher-end phones when it finally came out. If that meant waiting until March or April, okay, I can understand wanting to get this out of the gate when you did, Microsoft. But still, this has to really suck for even proponents of the platform, because when Microsoft is putting these next-gen features, and yeah, it's still a preview, and it will come to more phones later, and it'll be more polished, but when it's giving this early taste for, I mean, I'm sorry, some of this is some crappy hardware here. Crappy comparatively, yes, Windows Phone runs good on lower-end hardware. Yes, there's a real market for low and mid-range devices, but, I mean, come on, Microsoft. This is a little embarrassing, more than a little disappointing, and for fans of the platform who really wanted to see do great things with great hardware, I feel like this is just another... We're not so concerned about these the bleeding edge. I've been using that phrase a lot. We're not so concerned about the super high end here. Maybe that's a good thing and it's making it more accessible. But for the really techie, geeky guys, I feel it's a disappointment. What do you guys think?
I think Paul Thurrott feels quite the same way and has been vocally lambasting Microsoft for this misstep. I don't think it's that big a deal, frankly, particularly with the technical limitations that we were clued in on. From where I'm sitting, Stephen, this is a technical preview, and Microsoft is using it to aggregate feedback as much as anything else from the hardest core of the fans. Yes, the hardest core people are more likely to have the high-end flagships, and it's a little bit of a slap in the face in that regard, but it's not like this is the only release. Yeah,
but this is like, what if last year at Google I.O. we hear about Android L, that preview release comes out, and it's only for the Galaxy Nexus, No,
I understand. I know, but this is the first time we've seen a public release of any Windows Phone build, right? I mean, last year I seem to recall us being brought in for briefings when they had a much more shined up version. But
I think they had the Insider program before, didn't they?
The Insider
program. There was an issue you couldn't downgrade. Remember, that was the big new thing with this one. Is now there's a way to move back.
I don't remember. So sadly, it all bleeds together. But regardless, I don't. I'm glad that no one, to my knowledge, has yet come up with a Twitter hashtag and a gate suffix for this, like tech preview gate.
Yeah,
but I'm a little surprised no one has, because there's so much just umbrage in Twitter about this, and I'm just like, what are you? What?
I know. Chillax. It'll come to these eventually. Right. I know.
One of our colleagues at another site, whose name I won't mention, was like, didn't have an 830, so he went and got an 830, and then now he can run the technical preview. Like, I'm not saying everyone should go buy an 830, obviously, but hey.
I did think it was a little hysterical. When this first came out, I hit up Michael with a message. He's like, have you seen this yet? It's come out. Are we going to do a video on this? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm waiting for it on my HTC One M8. There ain't no way the preview's coming out for the One M8.
Right,
You
but
get that in your head.
I was doing that based on the information I'd gotten earlier in the week that it was only going to come to the M8. But that was incorrect. So, anyway, whatever. We had some stuff lying around. Cam, we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts on Windows 10 when it gets a little bit more mature. I imagine you'll spend some time with it once it gets a little polished up, yeah?
Yes, I will be. Definitely.
Good. We have just enough time for listener mail, guys, so I'll ask Jules to bring us into that. We're not using the board, so forget it. We'll do it for the live, for the HQ. I'm at 15% battery life, so this is what we call a race to the finish initiative. And we're going to start with listener mail number 1, if I can find it. Cam, you want to stick around and help us answer these real quickly?
I can do, yeah.
Thanks, man. This is listener mail number 1 from Eli Kentel. With phones like the S6 and Z4 approaching, I was wondering if people really care if their phone has an IP rating, ingress protection, or water and dust rating. People baby their phone anyway, so I wonder if it matters. Thanks in advance, and love the show. I'll answer first. Eli, it would be my contention that people baby their phones because many phones can't need to be babied, and they can't handle real life. For the vast majority of my existence, yeah, I don't need an IP-certified phone, but this is me talking in the depths of February in Boston when all I want to do is stay inside and stay away from the horrible cold outside. In the summer, or I'm going to the beach all the time, or I'm on the boat, or I'm whatever. I'm hiking maybe. I don't want to pull out a phone that's 5 millimeters thin, and if I put it down on the wrong branch, it'll break in half. I want something robust, and I don't want to have to go spend a bunch of money on a case that, 1, is going to bulk the effer up, and 2, is going to look ugly as sin on the thing. F cases, man. So, yeah, I need an IP rating. I like them, and I'm going to be sad when the S6 probably launches without one, because I think that was one of the best things about the S5. What do you think, either of you gentlemen?
I'm inclined to agree. I've got the Z3, and nice. I live in an area where it rains probably 80% of the year, and having worked in mobile phone retail and dealt with insurance claims of water damage, there's nothing more freeing than going out with a phone and being able to answer it in the rain.
Totally.
Look at my phone in the rain without having to put a life proof on it. That's what I have to put on my iPhone 6 if I'm going out for a run, or if I'm going out and it's a bit damp, I put a waterproof case on my phone.
God, and isn't that so frustrating?
Yeah, with the Z3, it's fine. I've got no worries. It'll last. It's great.
Yeah.
I totally get where this question is coming from. For one, I find those ratings extremely confusing because a lot of different numbers can follow that IP. They mean different things. It's not going to be the same for every phone, and it's not immediately intuitive what the rating actually means. Even when you know what it means, though, yeah, I still would be really careful. I mean, if you've been watching our videos, you've seen Michael destroy waterproof phones by just dropping them in water like you're supposed to be able to do. And there's a lot of asterisks that follow all of these ratings. Like, yes, a phone may be rated for 3 atmospheres, but that's static water. Yes, you may be able to put it, 3 meters deep into a still pool, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can take it in the shower where there is moving water. And it doesn't seem like that's equivalent pressures, but that could end up damaging the phone. So it's really hard to just look at that number and understand what you can and can't do with it. So as a result, I think we are a little overcautious with these devices, for good reason.
Yeah, no, caution is always advised, especially considering the number of devices I've damaged that are supposed to be water impact resistant. Yes, Stephen. But if you do read the numbers right, you lessen your chances of that if you do some research and look at the tables. IP is different from mil-spec, and mil-spec is really it's become a rather shortcut and kind of inaccurate way of reporting durability, because it turns out that in order to meet the mil standard 810, or the 810 standard, you don't have to go to a centralized testing facility. You don't really have to adhere to any normalized or uniform code.
Scout's honor.
Sort of declare something mil standard if you want to. Like, the standard itself is something like 800 pages long, and it covers everything from handheld devices to like, but like, even in the terms of the things it covers everything from handheld devices to like waterproofing on tank treads. Like, it's ridiculous to say anything.
Next week on the podcast.
Yeah, that would be a fun thing to review, wouldn't it? Let's move on to listener mail number 2. Stephen, you want to go ahead and read it from our friend Baldwin B?
Sure. Baldwin writes, thanks for keeping us phone nerds fed with info and rumors enough for us to look forward to new shiny things, and a podcast to let us hear you feel giddy about it too. We are happy to feel giddy. Yes. Let me get this out of my head though. With the move to Windows 10, making the codebase uniform across all devices, and with Intel mobile processors becoming as efficient as ARM ones, do you think the next Lumia will run an Intel chip? Of course, this would alienate current flagships, but Microsoft did that before anyway. Would it make things easier or faster just to tell people it's one OS base that everything will be x86 going forward? Wintel phones for the win?
So, yes,
I don't know about this.
I had the exact same response as you, except mine was more like, I don't know, man. So
Intel's been a hard sell on mobile.
I called for help from our friend Joe Levi. He wrote a rather extensive reply. Stephen, if you want to get in real quick before I read that, because I'm going to have to power through it.
I'm hesitant to believe that this could actually happen. Intel chips, they've been making some headway over the past couple years, but they're still kind of fringe chips that when you see them on devices, it's not great compatibility. Will this new code base thing improve the situation? Almost certainly, especially with higher level language here. It's going to be easier to run on different devices with less of a differentiation because of what the silicon under the hood is. Still, ARM is so ubiquitous, it's cheap. Unless Intel makes some real effort in giving its chips away to manufacturers practically, I think ARM is going to be the standard here for a while. And just because it's a different underlying instruction set, I don't think it's going to impact Windows 10 so much. Ooh, rapping Michael is back.
That's a shame. That's a shame. I tried to sneak in there because I wanted to get some music for the outro to maybe save one part of the show, but we couldn't do it. So get out of my face, microphone! And we're not going to use that, and we're not going to have music, and we're just... Yeah, Winnebago man. Hey, Adam Lane says to this answer, well, Adam answered first, and he says, there have been rumors of an x86 phone, both running either Android or Windows Phone for a few years. I don't follow chips too closely either, but I'm sure it's very possible. They moved Windows Phone from the CE kernel to the NT kernel specifically for the flexibility to support a wider or growing range of hardware. It sounds like tablets with less than 7-inch screens will be able to run the phone-style version of Windows 10,
right.
And there are plenty of those on x86 processors already. Adding a little phone hardware doesn't seem like a big deal. That's from Adam Lane, our Windows Phone expert. Solid. That is one great response. Joe's response is a little bit more significant, and I have to go through it rather quickly. Joe says, this isn't the first time Microsoft will have unified to a single architecture, etc., etc. ARM is a RISC processor, reduced instruction set computing. RISC is stereotypically built for small, lightweight, energy-efficient code and devices. x86 and x64 are CISC processors, complex instruction set computing. CISC used to be the exclusive RAM for doing high-end, high-power computation. Believe it or not, we do a lot of what would previously have been called complex instructions on our reduced instructions mobile devices today. But the line between the two has been blurred. Joe goes on to say how that has been accomplished. Focusing on a single architecture simplifies development, testing, and QA for the OS developer, the OEM, and software developers. It also provides a more consistent experience across platforms, something end users highly desire. Amen, Joe. Could the next Lumia be powered by an x86 or x64 processor? Absolutely. Should it be? There are many reasons to support that direction. Is it the right choice? That remains to be seen. Joe Levi with a great answer. And unfortunately, we can't talk any more about it. If you wonder why I'm rushing out the door, guys, it's because I'm at 5% battery, and this computer's going to end the show for us if I don't do it.
Next time you drop out, you're gone for good.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. This is from Greg Vogt with a great question. With my current cell phone contract about to expire, I've decided to change carriers, was considering switching to AT&T and going no contract, as I have cell phones to use. Recently, through research, I found that I can get a similar plan on Cricket Wireless, blah, 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 since I'm bringing my own phones and going no contract. Are there any disadvantages to going with an MVNO over a mainstream carrier if they both use the same network? Greg Vogt. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, Greg. There are disadvantages, and they are predominantly in how much data you are allocated, because MVNOs buy broadband from the big guys, and after a certain threshold you are throttled, And we just saw a couple weeks ago, Stephen, there was a news story about
the same
carrier
thing,
advertising unlimited, and it wasn't true. Yeah, it's the same thing as the big carriers do, yes, but it is generally much more severe in terms of MVNOs because they are under restrictions from the carriers providing them the bandwidth.
Now, I read this, and I first thought about rumors. I've always heard these MVNOs, you don't get network priority. So, like, if a Verizon tower is crowded and you're on some MVNO that uses them, the people who are on postpaid plans are going to get their data through first, and you're going to get, be second fiddle. I looked around, and apparently that may not actually be true. It's a lot of, people suspect that their signal is bad. They want to blame it on something. But some of these MVNOs have said, no, our contract with Sprint or whomever says our traffic gets the same priority. It may be an issue that it's routed differently on the internet, like it gets sent through proxies through these MVNO carrier companies, so it may not make the most efficient route, but that doesn't have to do with a cellular network. And by and large, I don't think you're going to get a difference with the quality of the data you get. Yes, you'll have those plan restrictions still, which may be more onerous than with a postpaid plan. But
I don't know. I am always very wary of being on an MVNO because I feel like if there's a capacity crunch and there needs to be a decision made in terms of who you're going to provide content to, you're going to favor the postpaid people and
it
boot
makes sense,
the MVNO.
but I don't think there's evidence to support that idea.
Well, you're right. It used to be the case. Cam, any insight from across the pond on this?
I actually know probably less about UK networks than I do about American ones, since I write for TMO News as well. I've heard the same. I've heard that the MVNOs get lesser priorities when it's a bit busy, but I don't know where I've heard it, and I don't know if it's true.
Right. Yeah, this is one of those muddy areas that's sort of underreported because a lot of people reported on it years and years ago, and I don't think there's been a lot of follow-up on it. But in these days of net neutrality discussion, maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll do some of it if we have some time, because this is right there.
There's one thing I noticed. I actually used one of the UK's MVNOs, I think it was about 2 years ago. They were running off one of the bigger networks, and when it came to tethering, it wouldn't let you do it at all because you had to have different settings installed, and you just couldn't do it. So you sometimes have technical difficulties with using an MVNO. But no, I always generally stick with the big guys.
Roger that. Yeah, but Greg, if you want to give it a try, give it a try. I've heard great success stories from people on MVNOs. This is going to depend on your needs. It's going to depend on how you use your service. There's no reason not to give it a go, especially if you don't have a contract.
If Google gets into the game, like has been rumored with increasing frequency, that could put MVNOs on a whole different level here. So change may be coming.
Yeah, no, this is very true. I think we've got to sort of get out of here. How well do you think the Sirius Sense 7 will adapt to the Candyland Android Lollipop UI? Asks Sunny Kalra. I don't know. We've seen it start to sort of trickle out, right? It seems to be sort of a mishmash of grays and whites. I don't know. I haven't used it personally yet, so I can't say. Cam, do you have any experience with Sense on Lollipop?
No, I have none.
Me either.
I don't have an HTC device anymore, which is really odd.
What are they doing to you over there? You got a Lumia 400 something? You don't have an HTC device? Yeah. What's going on?
Oh no, I do. I've got a Desire 820 in the cupboard. Just over there.
Oh, thank goodness. Is it holding up? Is it holding up a table in there or what?
You know what? It's actually. I checked the measurements. It's actually slightly shorter than an iPhone 6 Plus.
Wow.
That just shows you how big the iPhone 6 Plus is.
Yeah, for real.
It's bigger than a Desire 820.
Oh, God. Source Sai asks, after the BlackBerry Passport and Classic, which do you think is the next step for BlackBerry? Where's BlackBerry going? It's a good question, Source Sai. We are about to look at the BlackBerry Passport due to popular demand. We've been we were bludgeoned for not covering it, even though BlackBerry didn't send us one. But you guys would not leave us alone, and when the opportunity came to take a look at the AT&T variant, which has slightly different hardware, we seized upon it, and we'll be taking a look at it. So don't you worry.
Where it's going next is going to be another full touch phone. I think it's the Rio, I want to say, has been leaked a few times. But just a step back from these last two QWERTY models.
No kidding. I've not seen those leaks. Thank you.
I've heard similar.
On this,
it'll be. I think it'll be more like. I don't think we had the Z. Is it the Z3?
There was the 10 and the 30.
Yeah, and then there was a budget.
Affordable.
There was a budget model that was the Z3. I think they launched it in Asia and growing markets. From what I've read as well, it seems like it's going to be a follow-up to to that device.
Kojo Wadu asks, this is our last one, I live in the UK, London, and I've never seen an Android Wear smartwatch. Do you see many out in the wild? I'll answer for Boston. I haven't seen any, I don't think, ever. Maybe once.
I saw them all over in Philly.
Really? Which one?
Moto 360's like numerous wrists in a very hipstery bar.
How about your part of the UK, Cam?
Nope, I have not seen any in the wild. The only time I've ever seen any in the wild was at IFA in Berlin.
Yeah, and everyone has 360s at those things.
Yeah.
Whenever see Phil Nickinson and he's got his Asus Zen watch on, I'm like, man, that's a good call. I should be wearing that too. I too want to be different. All right, we got to get out of here, guys. We're at 3%. Cam, I'm sorry for all the technical problems. I really appreciate you being patient with us. Come back and be with us again, and it'll work right. I won't have a major network outage. Google won't challenge my authentication, and things will go well.
Excellent.
Great. Stephen, as always, thank you for your hard work and your fun faces. I do appreciate all of them.
But of course.
Viewers, thank you for being patient with us as well. Folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Ali Spagnola provides our transition music when we have it, when the board works, and she can be found at alispagnola.com, at youtube.com/alispags, and at alispagnola on Twitter. This episode of the Pocketnow Weekly was, we tried to produce it with Jules Wang on the board. It's not his fault, folks. It's just Friday the 14th. He makes love to our competitors. Friday the 13th? Friday the 14th? I don't know. Greenpoint0 is his Twitter handle. He sounds sonorous at wers.org sometimes, too. You should listen to that radio station, by the way. I like it a lot. And be sure to find the hosts on the Twitter sphere. Steven's getting all aggro on Sony for some reason at Steven Schenck, StephenSchencck. Cam is tweeting with the likes of Jaime Rivera and Tim Stevens at PhoneDog_Cam. And I'll be bitching about yet another blizzard at Captain2Phones. It's Captain the number 2 phones. Pocketnow is also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+, and it all comes together like a fine jug of your uncle's moonshine at Pocketnow.com. If you enjoy the podcast, we need your help, folks. Please help us spread the word by sharing it with your friends who love mobile technology, and also leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Xbox, Pocket Casts, wherever podcasts are heard on the World Wide Web. As always, we thank our hosts at WERS, we thank our sponsor at LD West, and most importantly, we thank you so much for listening. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back with more mobile tech talk in 7 days.